Page 137. Such are the forms into which the islands of the archipelago hardened, but one need not think that as hardened it ceased to exude more metastases from itself. As it hardened. In 1939, before the Finnish War, GULag's alma mater, Solovki, which had come too close to the west, was moved via the northern sea route to the mouth of the Yenisei River, and there merged into the already created Noralag, which soon reached 75,000 in size. So malignant was Solovki that even in dying, it threw off the one last metastasis. And what a metastasis! The archipelago's conquest of the unpeopled deserts of Kakistan belongs to the pre-war years. That was where the nest of Karaganda camps swelled like an octopus, and fertile metastases were propagated in Kazgan with its poisoned cuprous water. In Mointy and in Balkhash, and camps spread over the north of Kazakhstan also. Boy, that's a word I've never heard before. Cuprous? I don't know. New growths swelled in Novosibirsk province. The Marinsk camps in Krasnoyarsk region, the camps in Krasleg and Khakassia, and Buryat, Mongolia in Uzbekistan, even in Granaya, Sharia. Nor did the Russian north, so beloved by the archipelago, and its own growth, Ust-Vimlag, Nor-Blag, Usolag, nor the Earls, Chevalag. I believe that all these words enter in lag, because in GULag, the acronym in Russian, lag is camp lagery. So if you ever see it ending in lag, then you understand they're talking about camp. There's so many words, there's so many different names and stuff. It's very hard to keep track of that kind of stuff. So anything that ends in lag, like GULag, you can assume it's a camp pretty safely. I think that's what it seems like. There are many omissions in this list. It was not enough to write Usolag to remember that there was also a camp in Usolia in Irkutsk province. Yes, there was simply no province, be it in Chelyabinsk or in Kubyshev, which did not give birth to its own camps. Sorry, it must be so hard to listen to when I can't pronounce anything. I'm so sorry for that. A new method of creating camps was adopted after the exile of the Germans from the Volga. Whole dispossessed villages were enclosed just as they were in a camp compound, and these were the agricultural camp sectors, the Kaminsky agricultural camps between Kamyshin and Engels. We ask the reader's pardon for the many gaps and flaws in this chapter. We have cast only a frail bridge across the whole epoch of the archipelago, simply because we did not have any more material available. We could not broadcast pleas for more on the radio. understandably. Here, once again, the crimson star of Natalie Frankel describes an intricate loop in the heavens of the archipelago. The year 1937, which struck down its very own, did not spare its head either. Chief of Bamlag and Nkvd General, he was once again, out of gratitude, imprisoned in the Lubyanka, with which he was already familiar, but Frankel nonetheless did not weary of thirsting for the one true service, nor did the wise teacher weary of seeking out this service. The shameful and unsuccessful war with Finland began, and Stalin saw that he was unprepared. There were no supply lines to his army thrust out into the Karelian snows, and he remembered the inventive Frankel and called him in. It was necessary right then, in the fierce winter, without any preparation whatsoever, without any existing plans even, or warehouses, or automobile roads, to build 3 railroads in Karelia, 1 rocade paralleling the border, and 2 more leading up to it, and to build them in the course of 3 months, because it was simply a disgrace for such a great power to mess about with that little pug dog Finland for such a long time. Oh, well, this Finn takes offense. We'll see. Finland still exists. This was straight out of a fairy tale. The evil king ordered the evil sorcerer to do something totally impossible and unimaginable. And so the leader of socialism asked, "Can't you?" And the joyous merchant of the black market currency speculator answered, "Yes." But this time he set the conditions. 1, that he be taken out of GULag entirely, and that a new Czech empire be founded, a new autonomous archipelago called Golzhets, pronounced Golzhets, the chief administration of camps for railroad construction. And that, at the head of this archipelago, there be named. Anytime there's a ZH sound, just like in the author's name. Oh, those are hard to remember, all of these. I can't even remember them sometimes. Number 2, that all national resources he selected would be put at his disposal. This was not going to be another Billimore. Number 3, that during the period of extreme emergency operation, Golzhets would also be removed from the socialist system with its exasperating accounting procedures. Frankel would not be required to render accounts about anything. He did not set up tents. He did not establish any camps. He had no rations, no system of differentiated dining facilities, and no system of differentiated food pots. And it was he who had proposed that the system of different levels of rations in the first place. Only a genius can repeal the laws of a genius. He piled up in the snow heaps of the best food, together with sheepskin coats and felt boots, and every Czech could put on whatever he pleased and eat as much as he wanted. Only the makhorka and the vodka were controlled by his assistants, and they were the only things which had to be earned. The great strategist was willing, and the Golzhets was created. Golzhets, which was the archipelago split in 2? No. The archipelago only grew stronger, multiplied, and would proceed to take over the whole country even more swiftly. Frankel, however, did not succeed in completing his Karelian railroads. Stalin hurried to end the war in a draw, but the Gulage death hardened and grew. It received more and more new orders to carry out, but now that with normal accounting procedures, there was a Rocade Railroad paralleling the Iranian border, then the Rocade Railroad paralleling the Volga from Suzan near Kubyshev on down to Stalingrad, and then the Railroad of Death from Salikard to Gorka, and the BAM project, the BAM proper, the Baikal Amur main line from Taishat to Bratsk, and farther. Further, Frankel's idea enriched the development of GULag itself. It became to be considered necessary to organize GULag itself in terms of branch administrations, just as Sovnarkom, the Council of People's Commissars, consisted of narcomats, people's commissariats. So GULag created its own ministries for its own empire. GULag, the chief administration of logging camps, Glavpromstroy, the chief administration of camps for industrial construction, GULGMP, the chief administration of camps for the mining and metallurgical industry. Then came the war, and all these GULag ministries were evacuated to various cities. GULag itself landed in Ufa, the Golazhets in Vyatka. The communications between provincial cities were by no means so reliable as the radio communications out of Moscow, and for the whole first half of the war, it was as if GULag had disintegrated. It no longer ran the whole archipelago, and each surrounding area of the archipelago was subordinate to the administration evacuated to it. Thus it was that it fell on Frankel to run the entire Russian northeast from Kirov, because other than the archipelago there was almost nothing else there. But those who envisioned in this the fall of the Roman Empire were mistaken, for it would gather itself together again after the war in even greater majesty. Frankel remembered an old friendship. He summoned and named to an important position in Bolshevik a man named Buchholtzev, who had been the editor of his yellow sheet, The Kopeck, in pre-revolutionary Mariupol, and whose colleagues had either been shot or scattered across the face of the earth. Frankel's talents were outstanding not only in commerce and organization. Taking in rows of figures at a glance, he could add them up in his head. He loved to brag that he could recognize 40,000 prisoners by face, and that he knew the family name, given name, and patronymic of each, their code article, and their term. And it was required procedure in his camps to announce all this information at the approach of a high-ranking chief. He always managed without a chief engineer looking at a plan for a railroad station that had been brought him. He was quick to note a mistake in it, and then he would crumple up the plan, throw it in his subordinate's face, and say, quote, "It's time you understand that you are not a designer, just a jackass," unquote. He had a nasal twang, and his voice was ordinarily calm. He was short. He used to wear the high karakul hat, the papaka of a railroad general, dark blue on top with a red lining. And he always through the varied years wore a field jacket of military cut, a garment which simultaneously constituted a claim to being a leader of the state and a declaration of not belonging to the intelligentsia. Like Trotsky, he always lived aboard trains, traveling around his scattered construction battlefields, and those summoned from the discomfort in which the native of the archipelago lived to confer with him. In his railroad car were astonished at his bentwood chairs, his upholstered furniture, and were all the more timid in confronting the reproaches and orders of their chief. He himself never entered a single barracks, never smelled all that stench. He asked and demanded only work. He particularly loved to telephone construction projects at night, helping to perpetuate the legend about himself that he never slept. And in fact, during Stalin's era, many other big shots were accustomed to do the same. He never married. He was never again arrested. He became Kaganovich's deputy for railroad construction and died in Moscow in the 50s with the rank of lieutenant general, in old age, in honor, and in peace. I have a feeling that he really hated this country. And this is the end of our chapter. Chapter 5 is next. And thank you for listening. Have a good night. It's nice to have you come and listen. I appreciate it. Good night.